Is he on?
He's on there. Yep. He's online. Lower right.
Okay.
Video
And
still
Eric
turned
is
off.
here. And how about
He
Ben?
double tapped it.
You double
Ben,
go back to the video.
I don't see Ben. Oh, yeah, I do.
I'm
Yeah,
on.
right in the middle.
Oh, the big B. Okay.
Okay. So we got a quorum. Did we get the, yeah, and Doug there too. Okay, do we have all the audio, video working now?
Yes.
Let's go to modifications, additions to the agenda. Is there any? With that, I have a motion to accept as is.
We accept the agenda as presented.
Second,
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed. Approval or corrections of many minutes, starting with July 14th. Is there any comments on that one? Seeing none, let's go to the next one, July 18th meeting. Is there any comments or adjustments need to be made? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the July 14th?
Actually, I'll move that we approve both the July 14th and July 18th minutes as presented.
Could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed. Okay, public comments. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none?
I think there was a chat message that might have been a public comment.
Yeah.
That came up.
Oh, right.
There's a person. Oh, Dick Withers.
Somebody's gonna have to read it because I can't see it from back here.
My name is Richard Withers, and I've been recruited and trained by Uplift Local to act as the documenter book meeting in the Mid-Columbia region. Documenters provide notes and background information about public meetings for journalists and news outlets, many of which are stretched thin within the rural areas. Please let me know if I may reach out to members of the commission with questions today, discussion, and deliberations.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to take a minute to introduce Mark Flaming.
Yeah.
Mark, hopefully will get approved by Klickitat County as a new commissioner. But Mark, why don't you say take a minute, a little bit about your background?
Sure. I think the part that's maybe most relevant to this work is work I did at the Inter-American Development Bank, which is the Latin American branch of the World Bank network, where I did a lot of large public sector projects, so in both financing into that. More broadly, my career is related to building financial systems that finance small businesses and also economic development for small businesses. So things like cost benefit analysis and the part of this bridge that has to do with value it brings to the community. That's also a large area of my career that I work on as well.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to you joining us, assuming Klickitat approves it. And hopefully it happens quickly.
Thank you.
So, thanks for showing. Executive reports, co-chair.
Nothing important right now.
Okay. Project director.
All right, we're working with ODOT on the Oregon Lottery Bond Agreement. I know Rob is on. I don't know, Rob, if you have an update on that agreement. I know last we checked in, we were a week or so away from that getting notice to proceed. That's still on track.
Yeah.
So we have been continuing to coordinate with FHWA on the MOAs. I think everybody has heard that if not, FHWA did lose one of their staff members who passed away, who was our lead negotiator, or lead headquarters representative for FHWA. They have got an interim replacement that's getting engaged in the project. So we continue to work with them on the 4 treaty agreements. Umatilla and Nez Perce are the farthest two along. We're working on advancing those agreements, and then we're still working on coordinating additional meetings with Yakima Nation and Warm Springs. We're still working through those. The appraisal for the fair market value of their 6F properties is underway. And we anticipate that in the next probably late August timeframe, we'll get that dollar amount, and then we can make some decisions around how to move forward with our 6F. The infra grant agreement, we're still in discussions with FHWA on the infra grant. They will be mailing us a decision or sending us a decision on a meeting they had today related to our infra grant agreement and how we're going to move forward on that. So we're waiting on that official response from them. There is some concerns about the infra grant that will need to be addressed, but we're waiting to see what the final word is from FHWA on that. So more to come for the group once we get an official response from FHWA. We will be mailing in our fiscal year 26 Bridge Investment Program application on the 31st of July, prior to the August 1st deadline. So we're in the last edits of that, getting that finalized and everything pulled together. We had a good meeting last week to talk about some comments and have incorporated the parts that we can on that.
We ended up at 1.8.
1.9 is where they are. So the final number that is in the final documents is 1.9.
So did they make the adjustment to the transportation numbers?
They did. They made some adjustment. They made some adjustment there. They didn't fully take that in because of some of the analysis that went into it once they went back and looked at how they incorporated it. Because of some of the diversions that won't happen where people won't make some of the trips they're making today. They went with the same number that they had before, but they added some additional language to speak to the probability of it being greater than that number. So what they did was that they looked at the data related to the number of diverted trips, which was more in the 75.
Your audio just went out.
Hold on.
How about now?
Can you hear us now, Catherine?
Yep, copy.
All right. That was great. Okay.
So, I had missed a lot of acronyms there. I saw some puzzle
Sorry.
faces, so.
So
CA is.
the benefit cost analysis is our evaluation of the benefits for the cost of the project, roughly. And we have a benefit cost ratio of 1.90. When we did the review, there was some questions about some of the data that went into that number related to the percentage of local trips that would divert if the bridge was closed in the future.
It's just that 38%.
38%.
And we were at 1.8 going into that
Yes.
meeting. So that's been looked at.
They looked at that. They took that into account with some other adjustments, and they ended up at a 1.9 total. On the 38% specifically, we didn't make any direct adjustments for that. We did improve in the narrative the language about the potential for that number to be higher. And the reason that we did not make adjustments to the 38% was due to, if you look at the two sources of data that are kind of known national sources of the data, they both speak to about mid-70s% of local traffic. What they don't speak to is how many of those trips wouldn't happen if there wasn't a bridge. So people would either just go to the grocery store on the side of the river they live on, buying daycare on the side of it, right? So we took a 50% number, which is where we got to the 38%. So we held with that and just strengthened it by saying that we were very conservative in that 50%, that number could be higher because we were already at a 9.1 or 1.9. We wanted to just strengthen the language in the narrative to say that we're we're
if you-
being conservative.
So if you cut something else down,
Yes,
this would go
we could,
up.
we could just readjust this number and add it right back in to make sure that there was no trimming of those numbers.
Do they-
That's how they ended up leaving that.
But do they do that though? They don't, I
No.
mean, once they make their cuts, you don't get to go back and be like, well, we were just kidding here.
Well, I think there is, and I don't know if Chris is on, but I think there is an ability to actually meet with them and debate some of the numbers if you see something.
Total.
So yes, they asked for kind of a response to it. So you would have an opportunity to it if that came up. So
Just so I recall, so the 38% was the number that came from cell phone sampling
It was,
style
yeah.
analysis, which is, you know, somewhat suspect, but so is every other form of data.
Yes.
But the piece that we, in any of those models, we don't have a solid model for diversion of trips. So we can, you can debate and say, oh, this data shows that 38% of the trips are local, and this data shows 70% that are local. But in both cases, we don't know what percentage of those trips would continue to happen if
versus
the
not.
bridge didn't exist.
Correct, or just, yeah, people would change their patterns, do something different, avoid, yeah.
Isn't that what the revenue studies for tolling, that's kind of what their expertise is, right? They have to be able to answer that question or they can't possibly predict toll revenues.
Yep.
Because they have to know if you quadruple the toll price, what's going to happen
What's the
to
diversion?
diversions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they went back and looked at some of that data as well to kind of validate where they were, so,
So it's the sort of thing that probably is knowable, but not at this point, we don't have data, so we have to go with what we have.
yes.
Thanks.
So once you choose that national statistic, then it's non-debatable.
It just, you've used something that's verifiable by them and it's not up as much for debate because it's a nationally recognized source of information.
So
I
we
think
didn't
that's
make it up,
debatable.
someone else made it up.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
But everybody's
That is
agreed that the
proven to
made
other
up number
people
is
that
good.
they can make it up.
They know what they're dealing with.
Yes.
And that's fine. I get that. It's, I deal with this all the time.
So the PDB team, James and his team are moving forward with the monitoring of the existing bridge. So in the process of purchasing that equipment. Looks like what's late September for installation of that material, that equipment. The section 106 MOA is down to a final signature with ODOT. I spoke to FHWA this morning about that. They are working through some last comments that the Oregon Division leadership had on that, and they said they didn't see any major issues. They would work through that, but they're working through a couple comments before the ODOT Region 1.
But I think
final
it's fair that we need to say that what ODOT is looking for, they need some financial help. For the budget cut that they just got,
It's happening, yeah.
that they want us to help pay for their involvement in the project and they're going to come back with a proposal for us. What we hinted at is that if we're going to do this, we want to understand what's the scope of service, what's the schedule commitment, so what kind of turnaround time are you going to commit to? And then we'll go from there, just like any other contractor. We would request of that.
So I talked to FHWA about that. We're gonna set up a meeting with FHWA and ODOT to walk through what that looks like so that, you know, everybody can pass an audit if we're audited and we can justify the money that we've spent with ODOT. So we'll work through that with FHWA and ODOT on what the documentation of that's gonna look like. And then the FEIS and the ROD, that did go out for cooperating agencies' final 30-day review, which is one of the last steps before it gets signature. So that was a big deal for that to go out. So that was the other big environmental step. So another big.
But they did it well.
I didn't write down the date, but I think it's,
Christie, do you know the date?
you remember the exact date?
August 24th.
So August 24th is when it's due back, right?
Yes,
Or to close it. Okay.
it's when we close the review period, and we're not hoping for anything back, frankly.
And just note on the special session, the letter to get sent out to FHWA on Friday. So they got that letter prior to their meetings that they had today. So but we'll update everybody on that once we hear back officially from you. That was it.
Thank you. Let's go government relations.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Fox. A few things to note. After busy legislative sessions in both states, it's been fairly quiet this summer. One follow-up from Oregon. Still no word on the governor signing the spending bills that included our project allocations. She has 30 days to sign those. And if she doesn't, then they just automatically go into effect. So
When's the date?
It's the week of August 11th. So 30 business days. We're on about day 21 today. On the federal side, supporting the Bridge Investment Program application has been a focus. Andrew and Josh with HNTB have been leading on collecting letters of support. They reached out to 50 some organizations around the states and the gorge, and so far have collected around 40. They've done a really great job keeping those moving and keeping it organized. Our state lobbying teams have gotten us letters of support from relevant legislators on both sides of the river. And Summit Strategies, our federal lobbyists, are working on getting us delegation support letters from members of Congress. We're planning a fall trip to Washington, D.C., happening the week of September 14th to line up with timing at the federal level. Folks are back in town when both houses are in session. And again, Summit Strategies is starting to schedule those meetings. So we'll be meeting with our relevant members of Congress, agency folks, and hopefully folks from the Trump administration. On the comm side, working with the committee on our 30 and 90-day plans, which is the framework that we're using to guide that work. Drafting a summer update. This is following the pattern of these quarterly updates that we send to our full list. Revising materials, graphics, an updated project presentation that reflects where the project is now and what our upcoming milestones are. And that's what I've got. Any questions?
I think it was last month, at the beginning of the month, you sent out an update about all of the posts you were going to plan on doing. I think Commissioner Fox had been asking for that for a while, and I really found that helpful. So if you guys can keep that up, that'd be great.
Great. Absolutely. I think the new way we're organizing the communications work with these 30 and 90-day plans will make that a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we have anybody from the comms committee on today. But that's been an ongoing discussion, is how staff can support the committee in reporting out to the fuller board. So thanks for that feedback. Appreciate it.
So I think we've got it on the agenda. Okay, we should talk about upcoming events, right?
Yes, that's now.
I'm sorry, under B, 3I, key project messages. So what we put on there is that part of the key messages that we as a group think that are coming up on us, that we all know from our committees, we want to make sure it gets fed into this operation. And it's a chance for you to bring to the team, here's what you think the messages are. And this is a chance for this team, this overall team, to go, well, have you thought about this one? And we know this one's on the burner over there. Have you thought about this and this and this? So if we don't do it today, I would really like to get into the habit of spending a few minutes every time we meet just to go through it, right? Which means you probably need to bring copies of the next 3 months messages, and then we can rip through it pretty quick and say, yeah, it still feels right for the environment that we're working in right now. Because this environment's changing drastically daily.
One that there's a lot of online push for these letters of support that are getting the community talking. Are you actively involved with that group, and how are we working together with that?
I'm not actively involved in that group. That's all going on, I think, outside of the project. Folks are working on that. I took a quick look at the draft that was created to make sure it aligns with the project messaging, fits our purposes there, but that's all happening outside of the project. And then that will be sent in with our VIP application at the end of the week here. So the team that's been collecting the letters will lasso all that work and put it into the application, the table of contents.
We did work with, Commissioner Edwards did set up a online thing as well for public to come in and sign up. And he's gonna take all those public letters, combine them with the ones that he gets to create a complete list and do a single public feedback list.
So what he set up is separate from the Facebook
It
group.
is separate, yes.
Trey was asking about.
Correct. Yes.
So I think at some point, it seems like there's some individuals in the community who are very active and very interested in being active. And we have to, on our communication side, make sure that we're having some conversations with them so that they're not marketing something that's different than what we're trying to market in our 3060. So as long as someone from the comms group is making those connections, that'd be a wise idea, I think.
I would also encourage the comms group to monitor what they're doing, especially in Facebook, because I know after our last meeting, there was one issue published, and I think she did a fairly good job, fairly well covered. There was a couple of technical errors in it. Probably not enough to make a big deal about it and try and get it corrected, but somebody needs to be monitoring that to make sure that if there is a fatal mistake in it, we're catching it early.
Right.
And I think we've got good relations with these folks. We need to continue that. Okay.
So, but there's a limit in terms of the comms group isn't going to be able to truth all social media, right?
No.
Are you talking about the specific letters?
Yeah, it's basically not the letters, Insight, this organization that publishes notes from our meetings.
Right.
Okay, the last meeting that we had.
Tracy with Informed George.
Tracy, in fact, she's online.
Yeah.
I thought she did a really good job summarizing what happened. There was one or two factual errors in there that by itself, I don't know if it warrants a correction, but somebody ought to be monitoring that from comms for trends. And if it is a big issue, we need to work with Tracy or whoever to get it corrected. That was where I was coming from.
Yeah, I think, I guess, again, I caution that I think our responsibility is limited in terms of when the press, members of the press or social media or whatever, there's a broad set of areas where people can be making comments on the project. They're not always going to be right. And we're not always going to be expending effort to correct things, especially if they're not causing any serious harm.
I agree. I just think we ought to be aware of what's going on out there, what people, not so much how somebody responds to the news article, but the factual elements of the news article. If there's a glaring error there, we ought to spend a calorie and make a suggestion to fix it, if it's that important. Otherwise, just leave it there. All right, can we keep going, or you want to leave that one? Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing about comms is there are best practices when addressing any of these things, including issues that might come up with misinformation. I would suggest that we follow those best practices. There's plenty of methods to address those kinds of things in the public sphere. Simple enough.
Okay, let's go to partner updates. Rob, do you have anything from ODOT?
No, other than the lottery bond deal.
Okay. How about, do we have federal highways?
No.
I don't see anybody there.
And I don't see anybody from Washington.
From WashDOT? I don't see anybody.
No.
Okay, let's move on. Consent agenda. We've got invoice approvals. Mike, you want to take that?
Yep, so the invoices that you see on here have been taken through the internal checks for accuracy and backup documents and things like that. It's also been taken to the engineering and funding committees. They've both recommended that we bring this forward to the group. So they're on here for your.
So if I could I have a motion to approve the invoices as stated in the package?
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Committee reports. Eric, you want to do the engineering one?
Sure. Our engineering meeting was really kind of focused on reviewing invoices that we just approved and making a recommendation on those. And then we spent a fair amount of time talking about the phase 1B and where we were in the negotiation, and you'll see that is in the packet as well. And those were the kind of the two big things. There were some other minor things that we went through, but those
6F.
got hung up. Did I get it, Catherine?
She said 6F.
6F.
Yes, 6F presentation on options for starting to look at options for those. We still don't know what the value is. We're trying to balance that with, but we did look at some options. Several of them had kind of fundamental problems with the structure, so those may fall off, and there were a couple that actually are more appropriate in terms of following the process. I think that 6F process is what we're starting to learn is it's inflexible.
So part of that discussion.
Are we just starting to learn that? You are.
Part of that discussion was a recommendation to push back at least one more time, trying to get an offset for 6F by putting in a bicycle pedestrian lane on our new bridge. And we were told at least twice, no, you can't do that. So I think we ought to try for at least two more times before we give up. Now, that doesn't mean that we should not proceed forward looking for land, but one of us here just has a problem spending as much money as we're going to spend putting a bicycle pedestrian path on our new bridge. We ought to get some kind of credit for that, in my opinion.
Did you get any movement on whether or not we can do it in Washington, or is it strictly in Oregon?
We have gotten a no from OPRD on that. Again, that's one that if you want to continue to ask, we can continue to ask, but we've asked a few times now and they've said no.
So I'm confused. So where is Oregon Parks in this process?
They are part of the approval process for National Park Service on the mitigation parcels. And
the state of Oregon is involved, the state of Washington is not?
Correct, because the impact is in Oregon.
Okay, so if the impact was in Washington, then Washington Parks would be involved?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and basically what we've been hearing is something along the lines of a loss of what is on paper a waterfront recreation facility needs to be replaced by a waterfront recreation facility, not just something of equal value.
You need to start there. It needs to have similar amenities to what you're losing, as well as be equal in dollar value. So it doesn't necessarily have to be waterfront, but if you're losing a grass field with a parking, you need to put back a grass field with parking. So it's not necessarily that it's, but if there was waterfront activities that were supported by that property you were impacting, then yes, there would have to be waterfront similar activities. So it kind of depends on what's being used on that site. And it has to be not only dollar for dollar, but equal use.
Yep. And there's not an actual documentation of the philosophy behind the mitigation that anyone can refer to. This is just something we get from talking to them.
No, there is process behind it. It's a little gray and some interpretation of what it says. It's not black and white as far as you have to do X, Y, and Z.
Are these federal administrative rules or?
No, they're Stewart on. I don't know, Christy, do you want to speak to the exact rules? If you know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, just a little bit. I think the most important thing is that the original law was very clear in stating that once the original funds were committed, then anything that happened to that facility in the future would have to make it right again. And when they defined make it right, it's a 1-for-1 comparison. So equal in value and equal in use. And that's where you get waterfront to waterfront and, grassy field to grassy field equivalents.
But those are the two key terms, equal in value and equal in use. That's the language they use.
No, that's my interpretation.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the
Yeah.
exact language, but I can dig it out for you if you want to find it.
I don't need it
Want
today,
that
but
for-
I'm sorry, I don't need it today. I just, because this has come up enough times that I feel like we're trying to meet a target that we don't understand. I like to go back to the
So
original
I
language.
asked Stuart to do a presentation at your next board meeting to go over exactly what you need and what the requirements are. So I'll make sure he puts in there references to the exact documents.
Yep, thank you.
We got Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
Arthur, something that I found very great to know is that Stuart is working with the Parks and Rec Department to ensure that there's some collaboration across entities to save sort of in time and process. But he has a pretty good understanding of what is the required, what done looks like, if you will, and then how to best get there. But it also is the federal entity and the individual in the role who has a lot of say over how much you can sway back and forth. So I think if you have a good case, and I think the presentation will go over a lot of the options, but I felt really good after the discussion with him. And I don't know, Eric, if you had any additional thoughts, but they went through all the different, policies and what the markers that you have to hit. And he has a pretty good understanding. But I think we can get him to probably email you the instruction.
Yeah, it was a pretty good, I thought it was a pretty good discussion. He showed us 3 or 4 options that they were looking at. There's a couple that got discounted real quick. But there's a couple out there that.
I just haven't seen these yet, so we have to see them.
Yeah. And they're coming to the.
He did a good job of mapping it out.
Yeah.
Showing it.
At the next meeting, he was gonna come today, he had some conflicts with being able to do it today, so he's gonna do it at the first meeting in November or in August.
I just want to make sure that we actually have input into the process before it happens.
That's why, yeah, I want him to walk you through what the process is and where you have input and where you can have to follow certain things and where you don't. So that you guys understand where you can input, because there's places where you can and there's places where you won't be able to.
Right, at the end of the day, this is money that was spent for public benefit.
Correct.
And it would seem odd that the public that benefits doesn't have much of a say in determining if something is as good or better than what's being proposed. So that's where I'd like to get back to the original language and see what we're talking about.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick
Anything
question
else?
on this? Is this F land, is that exclusively the area where the port buildings currently are residing?
It's not exclusively that, it's also the parking lot if we use that for use, so it's the boundary was what we showed, I think, at a previous meeting, which was all the property the port owned at the time that they took those loans out, which included the parking lots, the building locations, all of that. So it's whatever we impact for more than 180 days. We are asking for a waiver for anything that we impact for more than 180 days, but will return to its existing condition if they will waive that. And they have not given us an answer back yet on a determination on that yet. So that is still a question that we have out.
And how long have we been asking that question?
It's been a few weeks.
So
I was just going to ask if the Port of Hood River is involved in these discussions, because we also owe them to replace the buildings that they have, put on that 6F land, right? So it seems like they should have, some level of responsibility in here, in some degree or another, either in the mitigating cost of relocating them or in our having to, provide 6F land.
So yeah, Stuart's been keeping him up to date on the 6F impacts. And then once we get to the point of, relocation and those right-of-way activities, then there will be more conversation that needs to be had between the authority and the port on how to handle those.
Okay.
So it occurred to me, we haven't explained for the general people who are listening what 6F is and what we're talking about. So just very briefly, my understanding is that federal monies were used to improve lands, which are now going to be needed for physical location of the bridge and for putting the bridge together. And we're required by federal law to provide, to mitigate for equal value and equal use. Some form of language that we don't quite understand yet.
Correct, yes.
It's tied to monies used to create recreation
Activities.
And what makes this a little weird is that at some point in the previous 20 years, those lands were court buildings were put on those lands, so they were no longer recreational use. And it's unclear what the legality was of that, but we don't get to work with that. We work with the original intent, which was that was recreational land that federal monies are used to create.
Correct. Yeah, they would term the current port buildings as unmitigated impact.
Okay.
So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more discussion on 6F
There will be.
before we get there. Anything else, Eric or Catherine?
Nope.
Okay, let's move to governance.
Great, let's move to that. So there's only one item that we talked about at the meeting that I think is worth bringing up to this group, and it had to do with, there have been, over the course of a period of time, there have been requests or discussions about making changes to meeting structure, et cetera. And specific one in this case was of moving action items position in the agenda. And it turns out that that's actually built into our bylaws. We can certainly make changes, but what I suggested is in terms of, there are a bunch of things that we want to do and a bunch of changes we want to make to bylaws and other documents that we have. And I suggested targeting having changes made at the end of the year, end of the calendar year, so that basically this fall we could spend some time discussing these changes and having time to coincide with changes in representation and other sorts of things that happen at break of a year.
How about the thought, I think at the last meeting or the meeting before last, we had a quick discussion on use of volunteers. And your committee was going to take a look at it, come up with some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we talked about it, and I don't think we got very far on it. Kind of the we're not excited about making the committee meetings public meetings because of the additional work that creates for staff, and it also might change the nature of discussions. And attorney reminded us that we should be very careful of the fact that the committee meetings are advisory to the project manager. They're not advisory to the board. The project manager may be using the information that he receives there to make recommendations to the board, what the board eventually takes action on, but the committee work product is work product for the project manager. So we want to be kind of careful about making those into decision-making bodies. And that can kind of mess things up. So we're not going to do that. We have to stay away from that. In terms of inviting people, a committee chair can always invite members of the public to join. There's nothing that prevents that. And within the meeting itself, it's the chair's prerogative as to who participates and in what form they participate. So if there are particular subjects that are of special interest and people request entree into that, I suspect that in most cases the answer will be sure, come on over. We want to let more people know what's going on. But that in terms of making a blanket rule, we nudge right up against some legal boundaries that we don't want to touch. And we also should probably spend a little more time thinking about if we actually are going to go into that area.
Okay, the one statement I just want to make sure I'm clear on.
Yep.
In the various committees, the committees don't make decisions. The committees study issues and make a recommendation to the project manager for his consideration.
Right.
At the same time, the committees are getting more knowledgeable on various topics. there's nothing to say that they can't either, or for the most part, as individuals of the committee, bring forward that insight to the authority. When the authority makes a decision, you can seek input from any member, and if the members are developing their thoughts in the committee, so much the better.
If we have our attorney on board, I've dealt with this in both city and county politics, and there is a very important line in terms of distinguishing what the function and purpose of those committees is, and you're nudging your nose through that line and probably don't want to go too far into that. So
then I think we need clarification.
we do.
of that.
And so I don't see Mark on board. Okay. So we'll have to do a meeting when Mark is present. We can explain.
As far as I know, the committees are not making decisions.
They're not making decisions.
The committees are making recommendations, but at the same time, the committees come to these meetings perhaps more informed because they've had the time to look at various elements and they can share their opinions
as individuals. Right. They can, there's nothing that prevents you from doing anything as an individual, but when you are there in ORS 192, I think is the public meetings law, within there is the concept of governing bodies have the ability to create advisory committees, and they specifically have two different kinds of advisory committees. And we have chosen the sort that is not advisory to a board.
Well, we've got a problem there in that two of our committees look at invoices and the committee says yay or nay, they believe the invoices are ready for approval.
They're saying that to
the project manager, not to the board.
But then you tell the board that the committee, okay, I see the difference. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it may seem like a distinction without a difference, but
it is important.
It is an important
it really does exist, and it really is in the code. And you can go to RS 192 and you can see
I got it.
196 something.
Okay.
You can look at it as a staff meeting if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Same way the DOTs operate.
That's actually a good way to put it. That we should think about them, that we're effectively in a staff meeting helping Mike understand how we might look at these issues that he has to make a decision on.
Cover sheets do say information.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so if we could, let's move on. New business, action item 1. A1 Kiewit 1B package.
We'll start this and hand it over some of it to Tahiti to cover. We've been spending a lot of time working with Kiewit to get through their not only their scope for phase 1 and the deliverables of that scope, but also their fee structure and spending a lot of time going through the fee structure that matches up to that scope that we're looking for 1B. The primary deliverable of that is to advance the project through a final design and deliver a signed and sealed set of plans with all supporting documentation that would allow the authority to move into the next phase of the project, which would be the construction phase. And to allow them to do that either through Kiewit and through negotiations with them on a price, or to take that package of information and put it out to industry for a bid. So we've come to agreement on what that scope looks like, what the deliverables are, and the fee for that. We've also worked through the contract language to make sure that it was defined in the contract language to support that scope and fee. We've been reviewing that with the engineering committee as well as the funding and finance committee to make sure we're within the scope and within the budgets. We feel like we are. I'll tell you if you want to add to that from anything.
Yeah, so this phase 1B amendment is part of the PDB contract progression from phase 1A at the initial contract to add $53 million for them to finish the RFC documentation at the end of the phase 1B, which could be used for Kiewit's their own phase 2 price proposal or any other contractor's proposal if that is the route that authority gonna take to put in the competitive bid environment. The performance period is set to 21 months after the NTP, which we anticipate to issue NTP on September 1st date. And then out of 21 months, we're expecting 18 months for their design to be completed, and spare the 3 months if we have a funding or any other reason to go with Kiewit to negotiate the final price to go into the phase 2.
And the anticipated notice to proceed is right now September 1st, but that is contingent on lining out the funding and making sure we get the infogrant agreement finalized as well. So right now, we're not giving him NTP by the motion today. It's just authorizing the moving for the notice to proceed. But it's just authorizing us to go into contract with them based on the fee and the scope that we've discussed and the deliverables. But the notice to proceed would be contingent on the board securing all the funding to give them notice to proceed.
So basically, we're nudging into the actual full design phase of this project, but we have the state funding lined up, but because we have not yet received the obligation of the funds, of the federal funds that are part of the infra grant, we may have to throttle back the pace of the design process. So we can't. So what you negotiated in this document, in this 200 and some odd page document, is a full out 100% design package, ready to go either for Kiewit to build or for us to put it out for bid for somebody else.
Correct.
And that's a fundamental nature of design, a progressive design bid.
In fairness to Kiewit, the value that we've got in this contract right now assumes full funding for the design effort immediately.
Right.
We're not trying to cash flow restrain them.
Right.
It's ready, set, go, fast.
Which is why we can't give the no, because we don't yet have obligation of this.
If we get the funds.
83 million.
83 million. If something would happen to that, then we would have to have a discussion about the cash flow related to the project and how we would pace phase 1B or what we would do.
We do not yet have a clarity from FHWA on what the timing is of us getting an answer on that. And that's one of the frustrations, is that it's not only that we haven't been given a go-ahead, we haven't been given a not to go ahead either.
Correct.
We're simply, the dates keep on moving and moving and moving.
Yeah.
So this helps us with the feds, because as you know, they came back and said, can you in fact obligate this? And we're going to say, as of assuming this passes, we're there.
Yeah.
You guys, if we had to throttle this back, have you done any estimate on the percentage increase in the cost? Because you've got the overhead and everything else, you're throttling it back. What does that look like just in terms of the design side? And then what's the overall project impact? Because that's something I'd love to let the feds know that.
There's a couple things that would impact. One, it would impact your ability to go to construction, which we've talked about being a $40 to $60 million delay for losing a year. So per year, 40 to 60 million. And your design cost, because of the timing of the funding, I would look at probably a 6 to 9 month delay in design, which is going to roughly, we're looking at 3 million a month.
Yeah.
So you're looking at roughly 3 million times 9, 15 to say 6 months, 18 to 27 million.
But if you're throttling it back, then aren't you spending less per month?
There could be a little less than that. Yes.
Right. I would hope that
that's the whole idea of throttling.
You're throttling it back. So you're going to have more overhead over a longer period of time, but your work product's going to be the same.
Well, you got to be careful because there's some efficiencies in going fast.
Yeah, there's your overhead cost would be in the neighborhood of probably between us and Kiewit, $750,000 a month to $1 million a month, depending on how much because it depends on what decisions we would make of how much we want to throttle back, what do we want to throttle, who do we want to put off the job to throttle back, because then if you got to bring those people back, if you delay, like say your right of way, well, if the market changes and your right of way costs go up, that number has a lot of variables in it to be able to tell you exactly, but
But what I'm hearing likely though is if we don't get access to infra and we have to throttle it back, it could be upwards of $9 million in additional costs
At least.
course of that.
yeah, I would say that's the lowest end. On top of the construction of losing a year and another.
Is that something we can get in some sort of memo so that we can get that to federal highways to let them understand the costs of potentially delaying our project?
We can put that in a memo that accompanies this document when the document is approved.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, this is proof that we're ready to go. And we've done analysis and this is how much we think it would cost to not be able to
The
proceed.
impacts of not being able to make a decision.
Right.
Yeah, we can do
Is
that.
that what you're saying?
I didn't necessarily mean to tie it to this. I meant it kind of on the standalone so that we can let federal highways and OST know that if they don't want to move forward with getting this signed in a timely manner, this is the cost to the project at this given time, because we're going to move forward with design one way or the other.
I think what you're saying, both of you are true.
Right.
It's the impact by not agreeing to the infra grant funding.
It seems to me that maybe they belong in two separate documents. This is what we,
What is that?
well, this is what we've done. This is what we've been talking all along. This is the approval that we've told you was coming there.
I would.
And oh, by the way, if we can't continue to move on, like we've been saying for the last 12 months, there's an impact to the project.
It sure sounds like one.
Well, I'm thinking you just separate the two documents. So
One of them's a contract, the other's a letter. I mean, to me, it's clearly separated.
No, I mean, you're sending someone a copy of a contract. You have a letter associated with it that says, as we told you, we're ready to go. Here's proof that we're ready to go because this is the contract that we approved. And by the way, if we can't, the contract presumes that we can get started immediately because we get funding from you. And if we don't get that funding from you, this is what it's going to cost us. That was
I
one
think
message.
I would recommend we send the first letter, assuming we agree to this quickly. The second letter, give it a week or maybe a little bit longer to make sure that we get the right set of numbers. Don't try and rush it. Let's make sure we've got a good, solid story of what we would do, plan B.
What we heard from FHWA this morning was that we will have something in the next couple of days that's their official position. Maybe it's a response to that official position where we provide them that information. Because their official position could be, yes, we're going to get this, the money's coming, so it may be premature to send them anything until we know their official position. Because we don't know which way they're going to go right now.
I think it's prudent to wait 2 days to hear what FHWA's answer is before speculating on responses.
I didn't think I was speculating on any particular response. I thought that I was building into this, that this particular document does have a dependency in it. And we're just making it clear, don't think that this document holds if we don't get the money.
Well, that I think is fair.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on that, Mike?
Well, there's other questions.
I'm unclear if there was a deliverable there. Sorry, just trying to make sure we.
I believe we have at least 3 deliverables coming out of this thing. Number one is we're going to have a motion to authorize approval of the phase 1B contract with a notice to proceed to be provided later based on funding. The second kind of action item that I see is to, once that is accomplished, we send an email to Federal Highways confirming that we have made this award and we've lived up to our milestone. And then the third action is prepare a quickie study that if we don't get the federal funding by the end of the fiscal year, what's our plan B? And the plan B is to slow down, design, stretch it out to fund it out of the states.
And just the only correction I have to that is that the phase 2 is here's this document, and note that the document is contingent upon having the funding to proceed.
Right. The document and the value.
Right.
Okay. That's what I see, Catherine.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion we need? Yeah, Eric.
I think it's worth just kind of pointing out what is kind of in this base agreement. And then we also have some allowances that we pulled out that are, some of them are costs we know we're going to incur. Some are costs that we're hedging a little bit, that we can make some decisions once we have some more information. So you could probably do it better justice than I can.
So
Could you pull up the table, the cost table, and probably the easier
on the
way to do
meeting?
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on the screen.
So as he's pulling that up, what Eric's speaking of is you'll see an allowance number in the summary. So there's a fully agreed to not to exceed amount of 48 million, and there's an allowance amount for, I think, 4 buckets. Those 4 buckets were temporary design, geotech, estimating, and
There's 3
there's
temporary structures and geotech.
Yeah, so one was, let me see.
An LPH study, Mike.
So you had the temporary design, which was for Hewitt to design enough temporary to inform their final design, but not fully designing all of their temporary work. You have a structures based on the nonlinear time history. There's some early work that you do that details whether or not you need to do additional work. So depending on the first step, we'll determine whether we need to do the second step. And then the same on the geotech. There's initial investigative borings that you do. Based on the information that comes out of that, if we see the reason to go out, if there's a lot of variability or other issues with needing additional, then we'll execute those additional allowances. So you're approving the full amount plus the allowances, and then the allowances will be executed on kind of a task work order as needed basis.
I got this packet on Friday, and it has a 300-page contract in it. So clearly, I could not say that I have studied this contract at the level that I would if this were a contract that I was responsible for guaranteeing. So I'd like to understand who has looked at this contract and at what level.
From an overall review process?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
you just sort of describe how this.
yes, so the contract was drafted, it was reviewed with the engineering committee, as well as the finance committee. We reviewed the financial pieces of it. It was also reviewed by authorities legal. John Holgram, who worked for Dr. Garvey, who did the original contracts, also reviewed this to go through it, make edits on that. And then HNTB also reviewed it from contract language standpoint. We also, in developing the level of effort, HNTB's kind of sequestered a team, and it gave them a blank template for them to fill out with the scope. We also gave Kiewit the same template and same scope and had them fill it out. And then through that process, we sat down and line by line went through the level of effort needed on each item, understanding what the deliverables were.
Yep.
And then Kiewit has also had their legal team review it, as well as their internal management and other, James has reviewed it, and other staff have reviewed it as well as part of the development of this document.
And this process took place over 3+ months, right?
3+ months, yeah.
So there's a lot of discussion that went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
We've heard little beeps about different segments of it as the time has gone on. And you said earlier, you described sort of some of the key points of the contract, but can you lay those out again?
Yeah.
So I can.
So the primary key points of the contract are that we're getting a sealed set of plans that would be also with all supporting documents, meaning specifications, sealed, quantity list, the Yeah, specs, any special provisions that go with those specs that further detail the specifications.
What someone would call 100% design package.
Yeah, basically 100% design package that will be ready to go to industry for bid if you were going to put this out as a design bid build project.
That summary of the deliverables is the front 2 pages of the appendix 3, which is the detailed scope of work for phase 1B.
But I think what he's after is Mike, keep going with about the 4 or 5 items we talked about this morning. Those are the high points that changed in the contract.
Yeah, so it also, yeah, from the original contract, there was a few changes on just because it's changed in that we're instead of delivering a 90% set of plans and then negotiating a GMP with Kiewit and then going to construction with them and have them finish the design, we've pulled that and really are delivering a set of plans. And if full funding for construction is secured, then we will go back to the discussions with Kiewit about price. But until we have full funding secured, we didn't want to spend the funds to have them doing effort towards coming to an agreement on price when we don't have the funds for that price. And if you don't get those funds, this project could be delayed and the whole thing, right, the price is no good. So in that, we had to make some adjustments to liability, also, which is limit of liability based on how long the plans sit. And what Kiewit would be liable for if someone else built it versus them building it, and something that if the plans sit for a number of years versus everything. So we worked through those aspects to come up with a liability, as well as liquidated damages related to key staff. So if they've got 6 or 7 key staff on the project that are guaranteed kind of on the project. If they change that staff out without your permission, there's penalties to that.
Right.
If the project delays more than 6 months, then we have to give them a 90-day notice to say, hey, we're starting the project back up. And they have 90 days to get back to us to say, hey, okay, we aren't going to have this person, but we're going to have X person, and we have to have approval for that. So we really just made some changes in the contract to reflect what we're doing now versus immediately going to a bid discussion with Kiewit right away because we don't have the full funding.
And can you tell me a little bit more about what the decline of liability looks like over time?
So in the original contract, it was based on their contract value that they have been given up through the processes, right? So in phase 1A, it was 50% of their phase 1A fee. Phase 1B, it's 50% of their phase 1B fee. So right now it'd be 25 million. When you get to phase 2, we'll have to continue that negotiation, but right now it's projected to be 50% of that phase 2 fee. Would be
if we're not moving this design into construction,
they would be limited to that half of their contract fee to date, which was at roughly 20.
But that number doesn't decline over time. If it's 2 years or 5 years or 20 years.
That was one of the discussions, was potentially having declining, but we did not do that.
Okay.
I think one of the things that's probably worth mentioning is almost all of this discussion is what happens if the bridge doesn't roll out the way we all hope it does. They're all kind of contingency things. And I think Mike and his team have done a really good job of kind of looking through a mirror and say, okay, well, what if this? Then how does that look? And what if this? How does that look? That's a lot of, I think, what the negotiation has really been about.
I prefer if they look through a lens instead of a mirror.
Yes. Well, if everything goes the way we want it, it's all good.
Yeah. Does that help?
It helped a lot. No, it really does.
And from what I can see, both parties, work together to find a compromise. It's not a win-lose. It's not a lose-win. It's somewhere in the middle on both.
Yeah, and I've been aware of the discussion, the negotiation, but we're now approving a contract that's, like I said, in the order of 300 pages. And it's important that we explain to the public and to all of us what we're actually doing. And so in the scope of things, we talked earlier about, what are we communicating to the public, and what we're communicating at this point, it seems to me, is that we're either ready to go full on into the design phase, 100% design phase of the project if we get the infra monies approved in a very short time frame. If we don't, we're going to go into the design phase, but at a throttle-back pace. But in both cases, we are moving forward with design.
Yes, and you're going to get the
Different
same
pace.
deliverable under each case. It's just time frame in which you get it.
Although then at the end of it, the deliverable actually does change because there's a different deliverable if we then at that point have funding lined up for construction versus if we don't have funding lined up for construction. So that's a somewhat complicated picture, but I think the public can follow that. It's not, that's not rocket science.
To me,
I think that's
the key
helpful.
message is we're moving forward. We can move forward fast if we had this. We're going to move forward a little slower if we have that.
Yeah, I think there's more. I think the public can handle more than just we're moving forward. I think that people can appreciate the kind of the subtlety of this, but to understand that we are entering design now, but that the pace of the design depends on certain things, and that the how far we go in the design depends on whether we have the money lined up immediately beyond design to go into construction. No, that's an understandable thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the public to realize too that you guys are putting the project in its best position, that when the construction funds come available, you can immediately put those funds to use and go to construction.
Right.
Which means getting all your permitting, getting all your right of way, getting a set of plans. Worst case scenario, we do have an earthquake, the bridge falls down, you've got a set of plans, you've got the right of way, you've got the permits, you can immediately go to construction, trying to get something rebuilt. If nothing else, right? You've got something to move forward with if we don't go into construction right away.
And I think that, I think what people may not realize if you're not involved in government funded projects is that predicting what the environment for funding is going to look like in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years, 7 years is an impossible task. And the concept of having a shovel-ready project on the shelf, well, I guess you don't build a bridge with shovels, but having a construction-ready bridge on the shelf ready to go may mean that you get to jump ahead of a whole bunch of other projects if money materializes. And we know for a fact we've ever got out this water system because we happen to have the plans ready to go at a point when there was the Great Recession and people said, oh my God, we have to start building stuff. And we said, oh, here's something we can build. They gave us a third of the project for free.
Absolutely.
So those sort of thing does happen, and having plans on the shelf is a very valuable thing.
Yeah.
And I also think it's important to state that we are still in the design build delivery scheme.
Yes.
Enables us to jump on something if it happens. So we're not departing from design build scheme. We're just continue on the process, but deliverables are kind of a quick.
And we have basically, so what you're saying is we have a construction company already on board.
Designer and
we have a process where we could take an off ramp from that, but we have the plan as it exists is to move forward with Hewitt as a construction company. And as we go up to
our base plan is to keep going right with Kiewit and build it and be done with it.
Yep.
But we have some flexibility if various things happen. We've got options laid out in front of us.
I think the distinction that he is talking about, though, is that we actually have a construction company lined up, which is something a lot of projects at this phase would not have. So we can just move right into, if the money is there, we shift right into that. There's not a step lost. We don't lose a in-water window, et cetera, and just move right into the construction phase.
Correct. And I think that falls right into, there's some things that are not in this, like the temporary structure design. We don't know where we're going to be on funding. If the funding comes in, we could add that could be done
That's
concurrently.
the 90 to 100%
yeah
thing you talked about before.
So there's kind of flexibility on both sides.
Okay.
Do we have time for another question on this?
Yes, Ben.
So outside of the funding, which we've kind of talked about, the risks around, the pace that we are able to fund this this phase 1B, what other risks are there that could cause, or what are I know there's a huge risk list, but what are the top risks that exist that could further delay 1B in execution, or increase the cost beyond what we've budgeted, and then kind of in that what's our responsibility, and are there opportunities for kind of the other side of that, which is to come in ahead of schedule, ahead of budget under this contract in phase 1B.
Give you my opinion, then see how close we are. I think the big items that are still hanging out is getting the rod. And I think the team has made a lot of progress in this last year on the rod. And Christie, I think, would say we can see the signature of it. It's almost here, but we still don't have it.
Visualize it.
Okay, so a rod is a big deal.
Record of decision.
Record of decision. The next one is probably a whole suite of permits that we're going to need. And the team has plans to go execute and get all of those permits, but there's an awful lot of interface to outside agencies that we don't have total control over. That's a risk for us. I think those are two really big ones. And then there's a whole bunch of small ones that we got to just work through. To me, I think as we get into construction, the one that I'm most worried about, frankly, other than the MOAs with the tribes to make sure that they're done before we start construction, I'm most worried about making sure that we have capital that we can pay the construction invoices in a reasonable period of time. We've got a plan to fix that, but we're not there yet.
You mean cash flow?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I thought
There's
Grant was just going to fix that.
Yeah.
There's 4 or 5 items right there, and if you give me a minute or two, I could give you 6 more, but
Yeah.
that's my input.
Steel
So
tariff.
those are kind of our main inputs, the things that we need to deliver on our end. And then from the contractor side, or I guess for Kiewit's side, the work that they need to do is essentially, more or less, kind of filling in the boxes. Is that my understanding that correctly? And that sort of most of the risk that we're seeing is, them keeping the project appropriately staffed with competent people that HNTB is going to oversee. Am I understanding that right? Or is that too much of an oversimplification?
Well, I think Kiewit, and James, you could speak to this. I mean, I think Kiewit does have some other risks on the job that they're going to face, which is going to be, labor on the project. I think equipment on the project is always one. I think material cost is another one that could impact, depending on what happens with different tariffs. Weather here is something that could affect us. We had some really tremendous bad winters. We could have an effect there. So I think there's a number of things that we need to monitor on that.
But Ben, you're asking about like between now and the end of design, not so much into construction. What are the things that we're looking for like, cost wise, or something that could like really help us? I think a lot of it is in, the environmental stuff. I think it's, determining how we get access to key areas on the bridge and the most efficient access to get there. And to Mike's point is like the material costs. There's a lot of variability right now. There's a lot of flux, and we're doing our best as a project team to keep an eye on that and understand, is steel prices, are they going up? The price of copper, fuel prices, all that sort of stuff, lumber, they all have an effect. And so we need to just be smart about what's happening in real time.
So a lot of that though, that's still into construction. My concern is in design, the things that will trip us up in design. And one that's started to worry me is we make the assumption that there's 63 weather days per year. but we don't have good numbers on the wind speeds out there. We're getting ready to install it. But if we go and put that up and we find out your wind speed, your wind days are actually 150 days a year. Well, then that could potentially change the direction of, are we going to be trying to fly the steel in, or do we need to go back and do concrete or something else where you're not going to try to fly it in because it'll take just years. I mean, those are the types of things that we're talking about that would have a material impact on the design phase of it, where you're running down this path of design and you're like, oh, uh-oh, and now we got to go a different path on design. And that adds all the cost and throws away those other things.
I mean, the other big one is always geotech, right? You can drill holes in the ground and you never know what you're going to hit till you hit the ground. So
Well, we've
Yeah.
drilled holes, but we haven't drilled holes where the
Everywhere.
design says
that's right.
the
Shafts are.
shafts are going.
Okay, we've done some exploratory stuff. We've got a good idea, but when you start doing specific holes, there's always things that you can find.
And, the other big risk is the cash flow curve. And to me, that's an internal risk to us. But if we have, say, 90 days where we don't get a reimbursement from the feds or one of the states, and now we're in a cash flow crunch.
That was my point.
So are we good, ready for a motion?
We
Who
need
wants
to
to
talk
start?
any more about the 1B, or can we seek a motion to approve? Okay, let me ask it. Can I have a motion to approve the 1B contract?
I'll move to amend the progressive design build contract with Hewitt Infrastructure West for phase 1B, design pre-construction as described in our staff report.
Thank you. Second?
I would second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hey, so Doug, you were a positive, right? You were an aye?
Yes. Aye.
Great, thank you. A motion passes. Thank you all. It's a milestone for our project. Moving on. Informational items. I think we already talked about the BIP, the infra Oregon funding, right?
We did.
Key project messages. I think we talked about earlier that we're going to do that next time. So I guess, Dan, you guys will bring forward what you think it is by month for the next 3 months, and we all kind of look at it and share. By that time, we're going to know a lot more here about what's going on with the various elements.
Did someone mention that we met with Wyden's new, what's Lena's title?
Oh, she's a new field representative.
Field rep.
Senator White.
No,
So that should probably,
That should have been my government relations report.
it should have been, exactly. It's your fault.
okay, we'll bring it up now.
Sure.
So,
This was, I guess, last
Friday.
right? We had a congressional staff visit. Linnea Gagliano is the new field representative for Senator Ron Wyden's in-state team. And so Linnea came out and we gave her a tour of the Oregon side of the bridge, took her across, kind of gave her the full background and conversation about bridge investment program and the support that we will likely need for her boss as we make our case to the feds. But great visit, I thought. Anything to add to that, Mike?
No, but she was, she was up to speed on the project, and I think, we're very interested and likes the Gorge area, so always helpful when they like to be here.
Where is she at?
Portland area.
all right. We also talked about public attendance at committee meetings.
Already?
Yep. And one last time, we got a request or a comment from Mayor Bingen
Yes.
when she was seeking candidates for replacement on the Washington side. And she mentioned that it would be a lot easier. She felt you would get more candidates if we moved this meeting to an evening meeting. I know we've talked about it many times before, but it's probably worth doing just one more test.
Well, no, so I thought, so what I had recommended, and it's kind of in contradiction to this, what I'd recommended was that if we're going to change the timing, that we should have that discussion this fall with the goal of making changes, which would be changes to our bylaws or any wholesale changes like changing the time of meetings, that's the sort of thing we would discuss this fall for implementation on January 1st. And that,
Okay, that,
which sort of conflicts with her point that she thinks it would be easier to get people to volunteer depending on the time. This is something we have discussed, that the timing of the meetings, this is a problem that every single governmental body that I'm on has a discussion of on a repeated basis. Timing of the meetings makes it such that, and the lack of pay makes it such that the only people who become involved in the leadership positions on these organizations are people who have the independent financial means and are in a place in their life where they can afford to give that time and take time off from work and be present during a daytime meeting. No one's ever told me a solution for that unless we have money to pay people full salaries to do this job, and we're clearly not in that position.
so with that in mind, does anybody have any further thoughts on this about today or delay it? So I'm looking at up on the screen there about, do you want to talk, Doug, do you want to talk about now? Are you okay with the meetings it is now, or?
Well, no, so, yeah, because I want to have a discussion about how many meetings we have and what the content of the meetings is. And it would be natural when we do that to then discuss what time the meetings are. So I really do suggest that we delay that discussion until we can have a discussion of restructuring these meetings so that they make less demands of the.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. All I'm asking is, and I happen to agree with it. Does any of our committee members want to talk about something alternate to that particular method? And if you do, raise your hand or speak out.
I think that's a good plan.
Okay.
So the governance committee will take this up as part of a bylaws discussion sometime in the fall.
Yeah, what I would say is September, the bylaws committee will be discussing it and then make recommendations to Mike. And then there'll be further discussion at board meetings in October, November.
Okay, there you go. All right, good. Thank you. Any upcoming items, Mike, you think we need to?
The only one is, we've had the right-of-way stuff on here for quite a while now. It's getting us going into phase 1B. We are going to bring some of those presentations back and start some of that discussion of just what some of those right-of-way processes are and timeframes, decisions that you'll have to make. So we'll be looking to schedule those late August, September.
Okay. We do have one on here that joint meeting session with Port of Hood River in September. We still want to do that?
What's the reason for that? I don't recall.
There was a request by one of the commissioners to consider doing a joint meeting with the port on a annual basis. At that time, it was, maybe we should do it in September, but there was no definition.
I guess I must have totally blanked on this, because why would we meet with the port but not with any of the other governing bodies that are party to the CFA?
That was part of it. It was thrown out as a discussion item for all to consider doing it.
So the one thing I could think of is that we as a board have a responsibility to provide them with information so that they can make wise decisions about the stewardship of their existing bridge. Is that what this was about?
Well, that was part of it, I think. The other one is start to coordinate with stuff like 6F where there's some commonality between the two boards. But as I remember the discussion, it was what's our latest schedule for opening the new bridge so the port understands how long they need to keep maintaining the old bridge. At some point in time, if this thing stretches too far, they have to spend some major money to not necessarily upgrade, but to maintain the bridge.
See, the more I think about it, the more I feel like that's the sort of thing that we should do in writing. I don't like us sitting down in a meeting and just sort of all sitting around the table and talking about, I kind of feel like you're going to have an extra 3 or 4 years here or whatever.
Yeah, I agree that that's just informing them or providing an update on the schedule or whatever. That doesn't, I don't think that requires a meeting.
Right.
So we're gonna strike that.
Only if there are some decisions that need to be made between us.
Yeah, I think it should probably be done through writing as well, through some agreement.
Didn't we get into that discussion a little bit after the traffic jam and there was some misunderstanding about who was making decisions and how they were getting made, and maybe we overreacted and said, well, maybe we ought to all be talking. And
we talk traffic jam, you're talking about the Rowena fire?
Rowena fire, I think precipitated some of that discussion. And yeah.
So what I propose for the Rowena fire is the county has a responsibility for emergency management under the state emergency management structure. And at our Board of Commissioners, we've discussed a process by which the port, the cities, and including Washington State Transportation, ODOT, et cetera, are all going to be convening sometime in August to have discussions about that. So that's not our special responsibility.
Well, so what I was going to say is I think some of that came out of that discussion, and I think on reflecting on it a little bit, I agree. If our purpose is really to try to communicate milestones that we're looking at based on what we know for construction and fundraising, that's probably more easily done in just a memo that gets shared.
It's also more easy to memorialize. Much rather have someone sit down and get the words right rather than, gee, did they get that phrase that I said? Do they understand that?
Okay, so we're going to take that one off the list. I think there is a point somewhere down through design, definitely before we get into operations, that we probably ought to be talking, or the team talk to emergency response, that we understand what they're after, their communication tool, and what options the new authority can bring with a new, fresh bridge that gives them other opportunities that today they don't have.
Right. So we actually talked about this at the last Hood River County Commissioners meeting. Our emergency manager, Charles Young, talked about the ability of a new bridge to deliver multiple lanes for egress during an evacuation, either of Clickitat County or of Hood River County, because of fire, et cetera. And that's the sort of thing that they will be discussing, and it's built into the planning.
But where I'm coming from there is that's one thing, but we need to build in certain design aspects for operations that allow us to do that easier.
Right, and that's what we talked about, because he said, well, there'll be two. You can have 2 lanes of traffic going out of Hood River County or out of Clickitat County, and then I stopped to explain that that's dependent on the assumption that you have traffic lanes and 2 shoulders, and that they're reconfigurable so that you can get multiple lanes, or that you can work around stop ups, and that you also have the discussions that we've been having about the ability to use the bike ped facility for emergency vehicles only. And those are things that are built into the design discussion, but they haven't been guaranteed yet.
Yeah, and there's more discussion that needs to take place there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the upcoming, Mike?
Nope.
Okay. No upcoming events that we have. Next meeting is Monday, August the 11th, 2 to 4 here in the office. Let's go around the room. Anybody have any comments that they want to add?
Next Monday?
August the 11th.
Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
Not to go in reverse, but the discussion that the governance committee was going to do in the fall, is that also when they're going to talk through the committee structure, or is that a meeting we're still planning to have, that committee? I didn't know if I missed an email about that. That's it.
I would say you do it all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember I'm trying to remember the motivation for the committee discussion. part of it was just assigning people, or giving people the flexibility to move to different committees. But part of the discussion was about whether we changed the tasks that each committee had, right? I can't remember what was driving that. What were the
I think part of it was also making sure all the committees had clear understanding of their roles. So I think there was some confusion about what the committees could and couldn't do.
Right.
I think you clarified a little bit at the beginning of this meeting, so I think that was also some of the discussion as well, was who wants to be on the committees? Do they want to stay on the committees that they're on right now?
Right.
Are those committees functioning the way that they should be? If the project's changing, does the committees need to change? It's kind of a general.
Right. And my recollection is that I had proposed that we need to see if we get into the full-on design phase, and that's the point at which the tasks that the committees have might look different. And we're just this far short of that happening. So
I think though, if we bring on 2 more from Washington, that is a good time. That if we reconstitute the committees with the membership, that would be a good time to have, is when we bring those 2 people on who's going to serve on what committees based on people's expertise that come on.
Yeah, well, there's other follow-up things related to that. I think also commissioners changing out medicine, we need to have a policy and procedure about how to do that. So there's a lot of things that goes into that governance discussion that you were talking about with follow.
I'm sorry, commissioners changing out is a function of the boards of commissioners.
It is, but there's.
You mean is committee assignment?
Committee assignments, but also commissioners leaving. If it's an alternate that leaves, making sure there's a process everybody understands, like who's going to contact the county and let them know, who's the contact, what's the contact. Communication parts of that are not well defined.
That wasn't defined.
It's not well defined on who should do what if somebody leaves.
Because we just went through that. And
we kind of made it up as we went. So
you think that should be in the bylaws?
I think there should be some procedure on what's the process, who gets notified, how do we, and part of it is, so I'll use a co-chair for an example. If co-chair leaves, they're on the bank account. Do we immediately, it's the day we receive it, do we immediately call and get them off the bank account? Do we strip out their governance email address? Do we remove access to all the SharePoint sites? Do we kill their, permissions? Do we change passwords? There's a lot of things that need to happen if somebody leaves. And
so the fact
that what a company would do, but I don't know if administrative tasks that need to happen that we need to kind of lay out for staff, like what to do.
So the fact that I've lost all that access, should I take that as a message? I guess I didn't.
Password expires.
So just those kind of things, like administrative type stuff, like what do we do when that happens? When you take their stuff off Facebook, and what if they're an editor to Facebook, do we immediately eliminate their access to Facebook?
For all that, I mean,
it's all administrative stuff.
I guess I didn't see any of that as being part of bylaws. I would think that that's just administrative procedure that we should have.
Correct. I just was, I thought it was part of the discussion. That would be policy type governance discussion, that the governance committee would develop the policy or procedures for how to do that. That's what I was saying. Not that it would be in the bylaws, but just the governance committee should develop some process for commissioner leaves. Here's what staff's to do.
Okay, I just would think that administrative staff would make that recommendation.
We can do that. We can lay out what we did.
Right.
So why doesn't staff put that in something to take to the governance committee, and the governance committee can review it and provide recommendation?
We can do that.
So that's not generally, that's not the sort of thing that goes up to a board level decision. I can't imagine anything in there. It's not
the problem that we have. We don't have permanent staff here.
I understand, but there's not 2 sides to any of this. It's, there's reasonable practices. When someone leaves, you don't leave them on a checking account, obviously. So,
and just what formally, when does staff formally say, yes, the person's left? Because we don't always know. We hear secondhand sometimes that, oh, so-and-so did something. Oh, wait a minute, there's conversations going on. Wait a minute, this might happen. Wait a minute. We're like, did they leave? Did they not leave? Are they coming back? Are they not coming back?
Yeah, you're not going to get it.
Is it hard?
I understand what you're talking about now, but you're not going to get clarity to that. But I will do my best.
Okay, let's move on. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.